consist. Join our book club as we pursue a more Christian, consistent life. Hi, welcome to Unfragmented, where Kevin R. Novak and I discuss a book each month with you. Join us as we explore the cohesion of things believed with things done. It's Thursday, February 2nd, 2023. I'm Leigh Bortins. Family is the locus of education and creation is the curriculum. I love learning with our children as my husband and I built our family, our community, and our business. Kevin, how about you?
Well, when you say that, Leigh, it makes me think about how when I was in law school and at one point I thought I was really smart, I kind of divided law into two categories, procedural and substantive. And I thought to myself, well, what is the simple way that I can kind of divide the Bible? And I thought, well, love is procedural and truth is substantive. So that to me is a similar framework than what you have here, and that a family is a means and creation, of course, is the end.
Yeah, and that's good. I love how you think. Okay, so if you go to leighbortins.com, you'll see a number of book clubs. The Math Map uses the same book for a year. Words Aptly Spoken, which we just finished, discusses a book a week. And on Unfragmented, we discuss a book a month. You can follow the links at leighbortins.com to purchase any book from any of the book clubs. And look ahead to the book club schedule at leighbortins.com with links to Amazon, where Kevin's books can be purchased, as well as some of the other books that we'll be having with guests on throughout the year. And remember, you don't have to read the book. You can just show up. We're going to do things a little bit differently today. And so don't do this yet, Julie, but I'm going to set her up to get ready. We're going to actually watch a few-minute video. But before that, I want to say this, that we're talking about the book, Thank God for Bitcoin. It was written by a handful of Christians dedicated to freedom in Christ. And I want to explain, I did a little bit last week. I'll explain some more about why I love this book so much. I've listened to the audio over and over again to deepen my understanding of scriptures. And on the first and third Thursdays, we have a Bitcoin meetup at Classical Conversations. If you're interested in that, we're looking at putting together a Zoom link on leighbortins.com so that people can Zoom in. Julie and Jessica tried it today for the first time to make sure the technology worked. There's about a dozen of us who drive over there, and not just from CC, from all business people from around our community. And we just talk about Bitcoin and what the future holds in technology for our families. So Thursdays, by the way, are also when I meet with Robert, my son. He's the CEO of Classical Conversations. So I call Thursday Thinking Thursday, between Bitcoin, our book clubs, and my meetings with Robert. So that tells you a little bit more about me. So before we show the video, I wanted to ask Kevin, you've been reading the book, right? Thank God for Bitcoin.
I did. And, I made so many notes in here that my wife went ahead and put these book darts on here. And now there's so many of them. It's just ridiculous. So I'm sorry about my camera, by the way, but,
okay.
But yeah, I did read it. It's awesome. It's very helpful to me.
Good. So I hope that you guys will be able to read it. If not, and if money's an issue, it is available for free on YouTube to listen to. The writers want everybody to get a hold of it. And I think they may even have an Audible version that's free, but you do have to buy the paperback. Okay, so Julie, are we ready to listen to this first video?
If you're a college student, keep watching. One of my least favorite things about writing papers in college was remembering
What are you
the correct
seeing right
format
now?
for my
Can you see the
citations.
video?
In high school, I used MLA format,
Okay, let
but in
me
college,
change.
I was expected to know.
It's the Shaw 256 one.
Yeah. Yes, but it's playing an ad, but I think I need to stop sharing and then share that.
Oh,
So
we can
keep
listen to the
talking.
ad.
Kevin, tell more about Bitcoin while you're watching your reactions to it. And I'll switch screens.
Okay.
You want my feedback on the book?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I have a number of things here that it reminded me so much of. I mean, just budget, personal finance, taxing and spending. It reminded me a lot of what we've been talking about the last few weeks, because some people might think, well, the two topics last month and this month are not the same thing, but they're really, to me, similar in that we're talking about civil government actors, what they should be doing, what they should not be doing. And then one thing, I don't know if everyone got to the end here, but in the credits, there's mention of Gary North. And Gary North is someone that I mentioned before, and they gave acknowledgement to him. Well, he used to always say, you can't beat something with nothing. And what I like about this book is it's teaching us, but it's also giving us a replacement, a Christian replacement to what we currently have. And I like that. It's not just saying what's bad, but it's telling us also what's good.
Good. All right, does this mean you're ready to skip ads, or what are we doing?
What's the world's most popular computer algorithm? Maybe the SHA-256 hash function. I want to show you what it does and tell you about a problem that no one on earth knows how to solve, and explain why billions of dollars are at stake. The SHA-256 algorithm is a deterministic one-way hash function. Now, what in the world do those words even mean? An algorithm is just a process or a list of steps for doing something. A hash function is a mathematical function that takes any size of input but has an output of a fixed size. You can think of it as a digital fingerprint for the file. It's deterministic, which means whenever you start with the same input, you always get the same output. And SHA-256 stands for Secure Hash Algorithm, and it outputs 256 bits. What does one way mean? Well, that's just a function that's hard to do backwards. Some functions are easy to do backwards, like, for example, the function of adding 30. You just subtract 30 to do the reverse. But the function of multiplying two large prime numbers together is really hard to do backwards. Take a look at my follow-up video for more details. Okay, back to SHA-256. It's an algorithm for a one-way hash function that takes any kind of digital input and any length of input and always outputs exactly 256 bits, or 256 ones and zeros, which is basically a big long number, usually written as 64 hex digits like this. Let me tell you about two things that make this function really interesting and useful. First of all, the only time you ever end up with the same hash or the same fingerprint is if you started with exactly identical input. There are so many different possible fingerprints that no two inputs have ever ended up with the same fingerprint. And I mean never in the history of the world. How many different hashes are there? 2 to the 256, which means 2 multiplied by itself 256 times. Or, to be specific, 115 quatuor vigintillion, 792 tres vigintillion, 89 duo vigintillion, 230... you get the idea. Another interesting property of this function is that it's designed to have the butterfly effect built in, such that changing the input just a little bit completely changes the output. Let me show you an example. Here's a picture I took. It's 1000 by 1000 pixels, and the file is 24 million bits long. When I run this through the SHA-256 algorithm, it outputs this hash. Now watch what happens when I change one single bit in the input. I'm going to zoom in to this pixel on the telephone pole and change the green value by changing this 0 to a 1. Now I rerun the algorithm, and I get a completely different output. And that's from changing just one single bit out of more than 24 million bits. So these properties make SHA-256 useful for all kinds of applications: cryptography, digital signatures, authentication. Oh, and there's Bitcoin. More in a minute. Beyond the usefulness of this algorithm, I think some of the philosophical consequences are amazing to think about. First of all, it's possible for you to see a number that literally no one else in human history has ever seen before. All you have to do is take a picture with some randomness in it and then calculate the SHA-256 hash. So ladies and gentlemen, here's the world premiere of this number that I just made from that picture. It's never been seen before. Also, I think it's cool that here's a mathematical function that anyone can do on their computer, but no one has any idea how to do the reverse of this function. How do we know? Because there are billions of dollars at stake. You see, SHA-256 is a key part of the Bitcoin protocol. If you could reverse the algorithm, you could mine Bitcoin faster than anyone else and make a lot of money. In order to mine Bitcoin, all you have to do is find an input that produces a SHA-256 output with 70-something zeros at the beginning. But since there's no known formula, the best anyone can do is to do it by brute force, which means just trying a bunch of different inputs until they find something that works. Now, I said before, it's impossible to find an input that matches a specific hash fingerprint, and that's true. But Bitcoin mining only requires that you find a hash that's close, not an exact match. In fact, the difficulty can be adjusted up or down to make it such that about every 10 minutes, someone somewhere finds a match, earning themselves 12.5 Bitcoins, which is worth somewhere between $12 and $12 million. Also, that's why I think it's the most popular algorithm on Earth, or maybe I should say the most commonly computed algorithm on Earth. In the race to mine Bitcoin, special computers have been built just for running SHA-256 as fast as possible. How fast? Well, if you add up all of the Bitcoin miners in all of the world, they're currently doing 60 trillion hashes. No, wait, 60 quintillion hashes per day mining Bitcoin. Oh, wait, I'm wrong again. Not 60 quintillion per day, not per hour, not per minute, but per second. That's right, SHA-256 is run 60 quintillion times per second all day, every day. So yes, I think it's fair to say that SHA-256 is the most popular algorithm. I mean, unless you count adding and multiplying, which are parts of SHA-256, maybe it's the most popular big algorithm. Actually, I suppose there might be some digital signal processing algorithms like Fourier transforms that beat it. But more than 60 quintillion times per second? I don't know. Anyway, all of this is good evidence that no one has figured out a shortcut, because there's a huge financial incentive to do so. Or maybe they have, but they just know not to kill the goose laying the golden eggs and they're slowly collecting Bitcoins. Or maybe there's some kind of secretive government organization hiding the truth from the populace. Let's see, who invented Bitcoin? Nobody knows. What? And who designed SHA-256? See, the NSA, who are they? United States National Security Agency. Uh-oh. I think I better go now. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, Julie, for running
Research
that.
shows nostalgia can help you remember ads.
So why did I have you watch that? Because in talking about Thank God for Bitcoin, we're going to talk about the morality of various forms of money, but it does nothing in the book to talk about the actual technology that we are going to be investigating, through Bitcoin. And then just as a side note, that gentleman, Matthew Weathers, is really good friends with Amanda Kleist, our sales manager in California. And I was able to spend a day with him talking about Bitcoin and the math behind it. And so when a lot of people talk about Bitcoin, they don't really understand about the SHA-256. They don't understand why it's code that's it's totally inaccessible to people for like hacking and things like that. So I just wanted to introduce you to a quick math video. I suggest you watch it like I have 10, 12, 15 times. You might be able to understand it by the time you've gone through it that many times. And next week, we're going to watch a different video by Matthew where he explains something else about Bitcoin. So we'll open with that each week for the next, all through February for 4 weeks. So what I'd like to do is, because it is a book club, I want you to turn to page 15. And well, if you have the audio version or the an online version, it's chapter 2, the history of money. And the subheading is the role of money and properties of money. And so I'm looking online here, who's at our club, and there's a number of you who know quite a bit about Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and things that you can help our crowd get educated on. So, but first, let's talk about what just money is first. And I'm going to read some things because I know a lot of you watched it rather than read the book. But the role of money, it says money is a tool for trade. It's quite simply the most tradable asset in any society. Money helps move value across time and space. Does anybody want to refute that definition or say it's differently? It's a tool for trade. It's simply the most tradable asset. In other words, nobody wants a money they can't use. Are we good with that definition? So far, so good. Nobody's even nodding. Did I just stun you with the SHA-256 video?
Oh, they're all like me riding in the car with you, Leigh, listening to things. We need to maybe watch it again.
Yeah. You can go home and do that. Or
That's
you're already
right. I
home.
shared the link below.
Yes,
And so did
that-
Chris.
That's great. Okay, so then they go on after that definition to talk about the properties of money. And so I thought we should spend some time on that. There's 5 properties of money. And I want to review what they are, and then I want you to help me think of examples. So like if we're explaining this to our children, what money is, I want to have some stories and examples for them. So first, that money must be divisible. Why must money be divisible? Well, you may not have a dollar's worth of something you want to exchange. You might only have 10 cents worth of it. So it's divisible. The second is money should be portable. In other words, it doesn't do good to go on vacation and not be able to take your money with you. The third one is money should be durable. We don't want it to degrade over time. For instance, do you think many cultures have used butter as a form of money? Probably not, because it'll melt. Right. And then finally, money should be scarce. It's so that supply is resistant to manipulation over time. So I'm going to review those 5 again, and then I would like you to give me examples of good money and bad money. That would be stories like you could share with your children.
I think we
So-
missed one, Leigh. Divisible, portable, durable, scarce.
Oh, I missed one. Recognizable. In other words, we need to trust it. We need to say, oh yeah, that's money. I'll take it for this exchange. Okay, so I'll do it again. Divisible. Are you writing them in the chat? Yeah.
I am.
Portable, durable, recognizable, and scarce. So, son or daughter, why would a house not be a good form of money? These are examples out of the book.
Well, I mean, if it's a conversion van, it's portable.
Not divisible.
It's not divisible though.
So bummer. Okay, what about an orange?
Well, it's not durable because it's going to rot.
Probably
That's
not
right.
as scarce.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, how about some other examples you can think of? Maybe like, okay, let's do some ones that we know have happened over time. What about seashells? What's the problem with them?
They're not scarce. Maybe they were at one point, but somebody found some more.
Go get some more. Good. What else has been used for money over time?
I feel like there was an island I heard of that was using some sort of stone, and then someone came to the island on a boat and they had a bunch of it or something. But I guess using any certain kind of stone or mineral.
Yeah, they refer to that in the book here somewhere.
Oh,
Just for
okay.
an example.
I listen to too many podcasts as well, so
Yeah.
I don't know where I learned things.
Okay, how about the one that should probably jump to more of our minds? How about gold?
Gold, yeah.
Is gold divisible?
I mean, yeah, can't you break it off and
Yeah, it
Give
may
it-
not be easy, but you can. So that might be something to consider, is how easy is it to divide it? Is that helpful or not? Is gold portable?
Not, it can be, but it's heavy, so not
Yes.
convenient.
Is it durable?
Thank God for Bitcoin,
Mhm.
the creation, corruption, and redemption of money.
Uh-oh.
Someone's playing.
Jimmy Song, Gabe Higgins,
I don't know whose microphone that is.
Robert Breedlove, J.M. Bush, Julia
Somebody
George,
needs to mute.
Lyle Pratt,
Can you
George.
mute everybody? No,
Forward by Russell Okun.
I can, I don't
There we
know.
go.
there we go. I think we
Okay.
got it. Okay. So is gold recognizable?
Yes, but people were frauding it, weren't they? They were coating other metals
Fool's
in
gold.
gold. Yeah.
Mhm. So in Georgia, there's fool's gold up here.
Okay.
Which, yep.
So that could be a problem. And Diane's talking about something we're going to talk about later, how they debase it. And then finally, is gold scarce?
Mm,
So
So. I mean, people will say maybe one day we'll find a meteorite full of gold, but for now, it's pretty manageable in the sense that no one's flooding the market with gold, though they
Right.
could if we found more, another source of it. All right, so these are our properties of money that they refer to. Now I want to go over to page 18. And I'm going to read part of it to you because again, not sure everybody's got the book. So this is about debasement of money. Gold and silver, it's about gold and silver and the debasement of it. So what Diane's referring to. Gold and silver in their original raw bullion form were somewhat easy to counterfeit and inconvenient to trade. This created a need in the market for a more reliable standard, which led to the next monetary invention, minted coinage. To mint a coin means to mark it with a symbol that would be widely recognized and much more difficult to counterfeit. The kings of Lydia were among the first coinage inventors, minting gold and silver coins around 700 BC. By minting coins, the Lydian kings were able to eliminate the need for weighing bullion in each transaction, which increased trade. They were able to grow very rich by issuing standardized coins of different denominations. Lydian kings such as King Midas, King Croesus, and King Gyges are famous to this day for their fabulous wealth. King Midas is known in mythology as the one with the golden touch. King Croesus financed one of the 7 wonders of the world, the Temple of Artemis, which Paul would encounter in Ephesus during his ministry. And King Gyges was able to subjugate a large territory by gifting the oracle at Delphi talents of gold. These kings became legendary all because of a simple monetary innovation, coins. All right, so now they've got that little bit of history. And we talked a little bit about what money is, and we did the comparison with gold. It goes on for the next couple of pages to talk about debasing the gold. So what are ways that money has been debased when it was a metal? And then we'll talk about how money is debased now as fiat. So first, metal, how do we debase that?
You mix in other subpar metals. What were they used? Probably iron or coating other things with gold to make it look like it.
Well, even
They say
now,
they would
Okay.
shake it in a bag and knock off little bits or
yeah, some coins even today, the coins we use, is it the dime that has the rough edges?
yeah.
They did that so that you could tell if it was being debased. If someone was taking a little bit off of the time, the rough edges would go away and it'd become smooth, like a nickel, which is already smooth, but thicker,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the other way is through having combined elements like Diane's talking about. So we do that now. It used to be a penny was mostly copper. Now when you pick it up, it almost feels like it's a plastic token. I don't even know what's in it. Right. So the person making the money and saying that which money we have to use is the one that's got the power to debase it legally. If we were to debase money, what would happen to us?
Go to jail.
Called counterfeiting, right? Or fraud. Okay. So the Thank God for Bitcoin does just a really good job of talking about biblical passages about, not that we shouldn't be stealing, and debasement is stealing. So we've gone over really quickly, I get this, what makes a money, how you can debase a money. And then they do even more where the more debasement can occur, where we start saying, all right, well, the gold's too hard to carry around, or the silver, or whatever the metal coin is. So now we say we're going to use a banknote to show how much gold or silver we actually have in the bank. So does anybody want to share what happened with banknotes and fractional reserve banking?
So we do kind of have an expert on here, Chris, if you want to chime in. Chris.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? I'm Chris Salema. I work for Bitcoin Magazine. So I got to meet Leigh today, and talk to a bunch of people. So really excited to be here. But I guess what really happened in 1971 is basically we came off the gold standard, traditionally known as the Nixon shock, in August, I believe, of 1971. And obviously we were on a gold standard from around 1908 or 1913. It's kind of been debated, but we were changing the money multiplier, or the amount of fiat currency you could get in turn for gold. But we truly broke that peg in 1971, basically.
And so what was the result of that worldwide? What happened?
Yeah, so basically every currency in the world was tied to the US dollar. And in that moment, when we broke the peg, or the US broke the peg of the gold being backed by, or backing its fiat currency with gold, it basically turned every currency into a fiat currency, meaning that it was backed by nothing, much less just promises from the government. And we've seen over the last few years with inflation that those promises have been broken, and things are getting more and more expensive.
Yeah, we know how good those promises are, huh?
Yeah. I mean, during the peak of the pandemic, it probably was a good supplement for toilet paper, because that was a hard commodity to come by at the time.
That's great.
Yeah. So I've thrown a whole lot at you just to get through chapter 2 pretty quickly with its main ideas, and not knowing if you had books or videos that you watched. So who has questions? And even questions about the shop 256. Are we getting any chats? There's 28 of them.
No questions yet, but yeah, what questions do we have?
I have a question, but it's probably it's not a basic question. It has to do with the technical part of Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency that has a ledger. So I don't know if I should save this or throw it out there.
No, go.
Well,
I'm done with my introduction.
Okay, so Chris, I would like to know, because I have read about how there can be disagreements about on the ledger, and when that happens, there's supposedly some kind of voting that takes place to determine the accurate ledger in use. Is that making sense so far?
Yes, I don't know, I guess, what you mean by this. In the mining algorithm, basically, the video we saw earlier talks about Bitcoin miners, or the specific machines called ASICs, or Bitcoin miners, looking to find a valid block. In the event that two Bitcoin miners find a block at pretty much exactly the same time or near the same time, there's a thing where there can be a consensus argument where they're trying to determine which one is the correct one. And normally the way that works is that whichever one becomes the longest chain is the one that gets mined into the block. That's kind of like a very technical definition. Basically, if you have the Bitcoin blockchain is like a continuous block that's been going on since 2009. And the way that it doesn't have different forks of Bitcoin, or it forks off constantly, is if they find it at the exact same time, basically computers compete to see which one has more work behind it. I know that's kind of a complex answer. I hope that answers it. Is that kind of what you're going at?
It is. I mean, the problem isn't your explanation, it's in my understanding. But I thought that this issue also came up in the context of people transacting or actually counterfeiting. Is that not the case too, where there could be a question about the validity of the ledger itself?
Yeah. Okay. So I think I know where you're going. It's called the double spend problem. It's in the event that someone has 51% of the network hash rate. In that video, he said they had 60 quintillion hashes or whatever. Right now, that number is closer to 300. So as more and more ASICs or Bitcoin machines come on the network, it becomes more difficult to prevent that from happening. The only real way to prevent that from happening is normally companies consider 6 confirmations, or about an hour. Basically, that means that block is not going to get reorged or changed or double spent. There are, I don't want to say nefarious groups, but there are bad actors out there, scammers out there that will be like, hey, download my Bitcoin wallet and, send me some Bitcoin or whatever. And there's ways that they try and basically scam people into sending them money and giving them Bitcoin. The way that you basically mitigate that is using software that's more widely used by the community and that has more eyes on the code base there. So like just as an example, Moon Wallet's one of the ones that I like, MUUM. At the demonstration today, I had a bunch of people download that and kind of sent them $1 worth of Bitcoin to understand. Another one's Blue Wallet. The most common one in the world is Bitcoin Core, which is literally you're downloading the Bitcoin Core software that's been going on since 2009. They've had iterations or updates, but you're basically downloading the core software there on your computer. I hope that answers the question.
It does, and maybe I might ask a more simple question here too, and that is one of the things that I was thinking about Bitcoin, and I know the book focuses specifically, well, the title is Bitcoin, but is it possible that Bitcoin can become too scarce for it to be something that is usable, like what we're talking about, a good currency to utilize long term?
That's a great question. So actually, in one of the points made earlier, a good currency or good money is divisible. So one Bitcoin is actually equivalent to 100 million Satoshis. So just like $1 is 100 pennies or 100 cents, 4 quarters or whatever, one Bitcoin is 100 million Satoshis. Right now, the exchange rate, I can pull it up right now. I think $1 or $1 US dollar is worth, give me one sec, 4,240 sats or Satoshis per Bitcoin. Back when Bitcoin first started, one Bitcoin was valued at, like in the early days, like 6 cents per Bitcoin. Now one Bitcoin's worth 23,583 in live real time right now. So while it is becoming more scarce, you can divide Bitcoin down into these fragments of a Bitcoin. So, sending $1 worth of Bitcoin is sending a 4,240 sats, like I mentioned, in this current moment today. So yeah, those Satoshis or sats are what denominate and make Bitcoin more divisible, basically.
So basically, Bitcoin's designed to have more decimal places than dollars.
Yep. And there actually is, right now, you can go to 8 decimal places in Bitcoin, but the programmers have programmatically made it so you can actually divide it down further. That's more technical talk for another day. But yeah, right now there's only 8 decimal places, but it can go further technically on a code basis.
Anybody have any other questions?
We do have a couple. So Timothy is asking, is the open market a better guarantor of the value of currency than the government?
Well, it depends what you mean by the open market. So if the open market is using currency that's glass beads, that may or may not be as good as having a government with an army behind it. So this is the thing that's so great about Bitcoin is that, and why I started with the SHA-256. Did you see that it's math that's running this technology? And it's very difficult math to corrupt. That doesn't mean human beings won't find ways to make things miserable for us, especially as we go between the gateway of fiat dollars to buy into Bitcoin. That's where a lot of the damage occurs, because when you're making that transfer. But if you're trading Bitcoin within Bitcoin, right, and you think of Bitcoin as we would think of as dollars in the United States, the opportunity for the for just problems to occur is very minimal compared to anything else. So the open market isn't actually guaranteeing the value of the currency at all of Bitcoin. What's determining the value of it is the mining and the people willing to pay for it. But we can't buy it if it's not mined. So there's that scarcity part of it too. I don't know, does anybody want to add to that?
Well, and at some point in the book, I don't remember where it is exactly, but the point is made that that involves work, and that if there's going to be work, then you're going to be rewarded for that work, which is different than someone just printing money.
Mm-hmm.
So I like what you said there, Leigh, about putting effort into it and then being rewarded for that work.
Yeah, what did you mean by open market, Tim? You're pretty good at talking. Tell us what you're thinking.
Well, in light of the cyber currency market fluctuations that occurred late last year, it's not a direct correlation to scarcity or to some objective value. There's a market component to the value of these cryptocurrencies. So is it wise to place that much control of the value of the currency in the hands of traders rather than someone who's monitoring or controlling policy?
Are you talking about cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin? They aren't the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's a relationship. I know they're not the exact same thing, but there's a relationship between those two things.
I guess I can take this one to the best of my
Sure.
ability. So right now, Bitcoin, even though we see it as a global, currency, and it's growing in adoption, obviously, it is at the whims of global markets. Kind of what happened in last year, there was kind of three cascading events. One, there was a cryptocurrency called Terra Luna, which is, I don't want to get into it, but it's an algorithmic stablecoin. And basically what they were doing is they were kind of running a fractional reserve Ponzi scheme. So they were basically trying to be a bank without the banking of the Federal Reserve. When they blew up, or, the price of their stablecoin went from $1 down to fractions of a penny, they had 80,000 Bitcoins. In order to cover that peg, they had to dump those 80,000 Bitcoin onto the market. What he was doing was nothing short of fraud. He's actually on the run. His name was Do Kwon. He is, a refugee, and they actually is a red notice out for his arrest, or an Interpol red notice out for his arrest. Next one that kind of blew up was Celsius, was a lending platform that was doing something very similar. They were taking in people's Bitcoin. They were lending it out under collateralized. And then when Bitcoin's price tanked, a lot of their loans got margin called, and they basically blew up their business, along with BlockFi, along with Voyager, a couple other lending businesses. The last and final straw of that was FTX, is the most recent one here in November of 2022. Sam Bankman-Fried and Alameda Research, you probably heard some of that in the news. He was also running basically a fractional reserve Ponzi scheme. I have to say, allegedly, I'm not a lawyer. I do not want him and his legal team suing me. But basically, when they had $1.7 billion of outstanding claims on Bitcoin, when they only had 30 Bitcoin in their hot wallet, which we could see on chain. So basically 30 Bitcoin, I think, is about, at the time of the explosion, was $600,000. So basically he was running around with $1.7 billion of uncollateralized things that he owed customers at, less than a little bit more than $1 million worth of collateral. So like I said, alleged, but that's just kind of what I can see with on-chain metrics or Bitcoin. And obviously he was running kind of his own Ponzi-nomics by issuing his own stablecoin. Basically, the gist of that is, while Bitcoin is a free market and the market ultimately determines that, there are a lot of bad actors in the space. And while Bitcoin wants to be different from crypto loves to latch on to Bitcoin's success. I'd say 99% of those are Ponzi schemes. And I actually look through the majority of other cryptocurrencies, and normally I can tell apart in like 5 to 10 minutes why or why not they're a Ponzi scheme. Everyone basically loves the ability to print their own money, including the Federal Reserve, which the US, we kind of run the largest Ponzi scheme, is kind of the big scheme of it all. The long-winded answer is, I think in time, Bitcoin will separate from those other cryptocurrencies, but you do have to deal with the volatility. And the reason that Bitcoin trades or crypto assets fluctuate very quickly is it is faster than the fiat system, meaning that when things get tough in global markets, it's the first thing to sell off, not because people want to sell it. It's because they're forced to, with basically smart contracts on blockchains, whether it's Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, that it trades immediately and finality. Sorry, that was a long-winded response. I hope that makes some sense.
Well, and I remember seeing an article, I think it was through Real Clear Politics some time ago, where they were talking about some so-called experts were analyzing how they were discovering that more people were involved with Bitcoin that were speculators, or at least investors trying to make a lot of money, which is certainly, I think, okay. But that's a whole different situation than Bitcoin eventually operating as a currency based on the principles that we're talking about. And Bitcoin is not yet there, because you've got people putting money in and out of Bitcoin to try and make money and speculating. And like you said, some people were forced to dip into their investments into Bitcoin. So I think that's a good distinction you make, Chris, where Bitcoin, it wants to be a competing type of currency, and that's good. I think it's getting there, but it's still going to take time to just act as a vehicle for investments instead of being an investment in and of itself.
Yeah, I completely agree. And what I normally tell people too is when they're first starting out, this is what I recommend from a personal finance background, is to have 0.5% of exposure. So if you have $100 as your net worth, you know, if you have 50 cents in Bitcoin, I think that's a good starting place, or up to 1% of, so $1 of your $100 of investments, you know, whether you have real estate, whether you have bonds, whether you have stocks, gold, ammo, you know, whether you're an oil trader, whatever it may be. But I think a good starting point is 0.5 percentage point to 1 percentage point. I'm a Bitcoiner, so I'll give you the Bitcoin answer. I have a lot more percentage points than that. I'm comfortable saying that, but aside from that, that's the extent of it. It's, people say it's risky, but I think the more research you do into it, the better you understand, and kind of the more you see the value in the network and the asset itself.
So one of the reasons to read this thing, God for Bitcoin, is we need to start with a principled approach to everything that we do. And right now, for a lot of folks, Bitcoin just sounds like it's one of the other cryptocurrencies that are in the news. And there's a lot of scams, there's a lot of volatility, there's a lot of words being used that really aren't quite defined yet. Like nobody even knows what to call this. Is it DeFi? Is it Web3? Is it crypto? Is it digital assets? Like it's all so new, everything's being defined. So I wanted to start with a book that just talked about, in general, the first 7 chapters are just about what the Bible says about money. The book could have been called Thank God for Holograms, or Thank Good God for Gold, or Thank God for anything, which was genius on the writers, because should for some reason Bitcoin go under because of another technology, they can write the exact same book and just change the last chapter out, because we're trying to find a better source of currency than what we have now, where we just get to have a bunch of men vote on what it's worth every so many quarters. So with saying that, I have a couple of questions that I'd like you to, or examples, I guess, I'd like you to think about for next time. The one is, a lot of people are just really skeptical of the whole thing. And so when people are that way, I'll say to them, I wonder if I talked to my grandmother about when they started to have to go from cash to credit cards. What were they afraid of? What did they understand or not understand, right? Because they were going from this reliability of I can hand you something I can touch, to just this card magically working on a ledger and apparently being honest in its accounting. That had to be unusual. And so I think that's partly what people are dealing with now, is this exchange that we're having from our credit card systems. Really, our credit card system is what most of us who care about Bitcoin would be changing into. Not a lot of us run around with a lot of cash in our pockets anymore. So I think that's just, you know, one analogy to ask. Then the other one is to look at the history of the internet. And maybe someone here can talk about this before we get off. But what I feel like happened 5 years ago when I found out about, actually, it wasn't Bitcoin, it was blockchain. I have that engineering background. I thought that SHA-256, cryptology, all that was just really great stuff. And then 2 years ago, when it really started to make the news, and I've been talking to my family about it over and over again, Robert finally started investing. And he said, Mom, why didn't you buy it, 3 years ago when you first learned about it? And I said, I wasn't interested in the money. I was interested in the technology and the change that's about to come. Now, of course, I wish I had bought it. But to me, I feel like what's happened is I've lifted up the garage door at Bill Gates' house and I'm not walking by. I'm going to try to figure out what in the world is going on. And so a challenge for you for this coming week is just to think about what are simple ways to talk about money and explain things to people about this time in history that we're a part of with money. We're going to watch a video next week that relates to this question. And then just in general, what can we do so that people get to know more about why the current system is not ethical and we need to have something to replace it. And that's where I'm at right now. I am doing my darndest to figure out how to stop using government dollars, but it's really hard. They do exist. I'm meeting friends and people who don't just use Bitcoin, but exchange through barter and exchange for gold. But like if I just go down the street and get gas, I'm sorry, the BP is not going to take either. Right at this point. So I feel like keep reading the Thank God for Bitcoin to try to understand why what we're doing now is so unethical and so damaging to our grandchildren's future that I don't want to be a part of it. And we're trying to figure out what other solutions there are. Okay, so any other closing comments or questions?
I don't see any. I do see a husband just bought a mining machine, Diana's husband, or Deanna, so that's fun.
That is fun. That's why she knew so much. And then Diane's knows about lightning. And so those are things we're going to talk about in the next couple of weeks too, is the mining and then the lightning, the hardware. What's the difference between blockchain versus Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies? You've heard of NFTs and you've heard of the various smart contracts. So we're going to try to think of ways to explain those to one another so we can explain it to our friends. With that, we're done. Thank you so much, Kevin, for being here, and to the rest of you. And I look forward
Chris,
to meeting.
thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, and explaining all that for me.
Yes, thank you, Chris. We appreciate your expert advice too.
Yeah. Look at that.
Thank you for having me,
Thank
guys.
you,
I
everyone.
appreciate it.
Sure.
You can join us
Bye.
next week anytime. See
Yeah,
ya.
come next week.
Bye.
Good night.